Good afternoon, everyone. EagleX from ATX EagleX Gaming here today, and I have a BT10 deck profile here, created by my good friend here, Boss, if you want to say hello.
Yo.
Boss recently won my first BT10 proxy tournament with this list, and it is definitely a unique twist for what people have tried doing with this deck after the hits and restrictions for yellow-red hybrid builds. Definitely taking a really cool approach with it being aggro. Let's go ahead and get started about this ideal opener for what the deck really accomplishes. So traditionally people look at yellow hybrid being a control deck, red hybrid being an aggro deck, but when you put these two together you can actually build a super hyper aggressive deck that cleaves through security with multi-checking hybrids. So you'll build smaller stacks to attempt to not OTK necessarily, but chip down your opponent. And you also have strong tempo plays in this deck as well, against Cross being one of the main decks that you have to keep in mind in this upcoming format. Now obviously starting out with Promo Guilmon is a super powerful explosive start, but it can become more lethal if you have a Fixer and a Pokemon to follow up the plays. So Boss, when you created this list, what kind of guided you to going for the more aggressive engine when you built it?
So the initial list was something KVN had come up with in BT7, I think it was, as a meta read. And it worked pretty well then, but he just didn't have enough turnies to really try it.
Yeah, what was the meta read you were going for then?
He was going to just blow blue hybrid out of the water, and it won versus pure yellow hybrid as well. Just due to the amount of checks that you could reach.
And just pump out real fast.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we're talking about these checks that you can pump out, this really leads into this ideal combo that we're going for. For anyone who doesn't know, Takuya is a Tamer we got in BT7, I think it was. He has a effect where you could choose to whiff the Emperor Grey, Warp, and Tuck hybrids underneath, which is possible to do in this deck, but the main thing you're really using him for is that inheritable plus 2000 DP. Then if you hit a 10,000 DP threshold, you get an extra check. Additionally, if you go into Burning Grey, you can pop a 4k body or less, which in the Cross format is super big, as lots of things from Cross are naturally 4k, including their blockers. And then if you go into an Alda, you get extra DP. An Atomic Inferno, make sure you actually hit that 10k threshold with just Burning Grey alone. So obviously when you deck build this, Boss, you have things in mind, you have really cool ratios. What really led to Aldemon being the main boss monster of your deck per se?
So the reason I opted into not running any 6s were that they weren't very memory efficient, and that's a big point of this deck, is that I want to try to do as much as I can for as little memory as possible. Like 3 checks for 3, 3 checks for 1 even if I have a Boko out. And all that just kind of is there for slower matchups where I need to either get bigger or, as you said, the Takuya thing where you can get AVP and go for 3 or 4 checks. It's like the main thought behind all of them.
Yeah, and I absolutely love the innovation for it. And we're going to show the deck list here in a moment. We got like one more slide to go through, but things to be mindful of also when you play this deck. Atomic Inferno's security effect is a +1 aura. So that means during your next turn, if you evo a hybrid over a Tamer, you do get the additional check on those Digimon as well, as it's a blanket effect you will have. When you use Zoe, she is not color restricted, so she can pull any color hybrid from security. And then Sunrise Buster, for timing purposes, you play the Tamer first, reduce the DP on the target, and then the on play, if you have one, is a pending effect once you finish resolving Sunrise Buster. It's very niche. I don't think it really comes up a whole lot at the moment, but it could come up in the future. But this is your bread and butter, going up into a Takuya with a Boko out, or go into Alda with a Boko out so you can Atomic Inferno the stack and be very safe. High DP multi-checking stack. And then one thing we really want to address here, when you talk about yellow hybrid, red hybrid, lots of people hop on this train of the Rise Greymon package. So I wanted to give you a moment here to kind of discuss the merits that might be to it, why you choose not to use it, and so forth from there. So I'll kind of let you have the floor here for this part.
Alright, cool. Yeah, so the reason I really dislike this route is that I think it's way, way, way slower. Right? My whole idea with the deck is that I want to outspeed everything. I want to be faster than Cross, I want to be faster than the old decay decks. And they're not really building boards either, so if I'm going this approach, what am I actually popping? Am I popping a rookie, a champion? Burning Ray can do the same thing if it's 4 careless, and that's usually what Cross Digimon are at, so...
Yeah, and like...
Well, I don't really see a lot of merit for this. Sure, you get Tamers, but they don't do much.
Yeah, like, getting the on-plays is neat, and you definitely get more value, but you're already running... Like, if you guys watch any gameplay, you have a small hand size a lot of the time with this deck, so you don't need value a lot of the time. You just need efficient plays, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, you're not going to have 3 or more yellow Tamers for the inheritable Arise Gray, and similar to what you're saying, popping things is kind of hard to do, as there's nothing to normally pop.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this definitely has some merit in EX3, for example, if Hydra starts popping up.
Yeah,
then I could see this route going... maybe be worth looking at least.
When it's more of a board-oriented format.
Yeah.
I think that's the really big thing. Like, you don't see people building board often enough for it to be impactful enough.
Yeah.
Like, they're great cards, but they're just not in a meta-relevant format. So then, we've talked about the deck, and now we got the whole deck profile here. The base is a really solid Guilmon engine base. Guilmon's a strict draw one if you attack with Guilmon. So we have Promo Guilmon for an extra draw, the Guilmon X, which could conditionally pop a 3k body if you go over another Guilmon. And then Solarmon. Solarmon is a big soul this deck, I feel, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely needed versus Cross to shut them down and force them into plays that they really wouldn't want to do, probably.
Yeah, like, the most optimal thing for them to do to get rid of Solarmon is to use the Yellow Tamer to call Darula to pop Solar. Or you can even do it with Boko too, just because they're smaller bodies, but having Solar out is such a big floodgate against Cross for slowing down their plays. Similarly, Burning Rays does the same thing going over Takuya, popping a 4k body, which, surprise, Cross has 4k or less bodies, with the exception of Sparrow if the all turns is live. Now, a question for you. I love the yellow-red split, and obviously you build the ratios according to the Tamers you have. How relevant is the Zephyr buff, though? Do you see that coming up a lot of the time when you play this deck, or not really?
It came up more in BT9, I'd say. I could definitely see it being the other way around. Like, if I were to go like yellow base for some reason, like 3 Zephyr for Kaze, but the Zephyr buff can definitely come up.
Yeah, and then
just cross 4 loops to shut that down.
And you got the cycle, and the cool thing is you can use the one of Jet Stealthy because you split the color base of the hybrids. The Taigari definitely gives him some really neat flexibility. And then the MVP cards of this deck is obviously Atomic Inferno, Sunrise Buster, Takuya with Burning Ray, and then Tamers just have so much value. When you look at these Tamers, obviously you max out the ones that you feel give the most value, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what led you to go for a 3-3 split of Fixer and then Taikaris? Because I feel like I would always want to max out on Fixer.
So the reason I generally tend to do 3 is that they don't do much in multiples, and if I were to go up to 4, my odds on just dying to TK forcing me to take red and not getting that recover comes up maybe a little too often. And that would also take up another slot for a Tamer, because I don't want to run more than this. I think this is the cap on Tamers.
That's fair, it makes a lot of sense. One thing I don't know if people notice is the ratios of Kaze's to Zephyrs lines up with TK's to Zoe's. Ideally, you want to have a Zephyr for every Zoe to maximize those buffing odds. Now some cards that I pulled up that we briefly talked about that may be relevant in this deck in other formats. Gravity Crush, Trident Revolver, Crimson Blaze, Lightning Joust, Reinforcing, Kari. I'll kind of give you some speaking floor here on these cards.
Sure, so I'll just go left to right.
Sounds good.
Gravity Crush definitely has more merit in this deck than it did in BT9, due to BT9 Blinding Ray just being a tempo play. You were taking that damage either way if you're getting OTK'd. So taking a damage really didn't matter, but in BT10, Cross is going to be poking a whole lot more, making Gravity Crush maybe the more attractive option. Just to not die.
Yeah, they both have use. Like, it's not one's inherently better.
For sure. Yeah, definitely a toss-up between the two. I'm not sure which one's actually right at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just one other thing is, like, Blinding Ray does force Taikari procs too, in case people are playing
Definitely
around it.
comes up. Definitely comes up. Trident Revolver is something I probably wouldn't fit in, just due to Sunrise and just dropping a Tamer for turn is already pretty good. But I could definitely see play. Because I'd rather play the next card, Crimson Blaze, if I'm trying to pop something that's 6k or less.
Mm-hmm.
It's cheaper, it's more efficient, it shuts down a lot of decks that might be in the meta, like Minerva or Jesmon.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about Minerva when we were talking about this earlier. And even Mastamon, you can stop the special summons, so it's a very big deal for Crimson being noteworthy in this deck, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely something I'd look at if we were going into a Jesmon format.
Mm-hmm.
Joust is just kind of a more generic Atomic. Could see play. I think generally Atomic's going to be better. But I think if we're going into maybe a heavier red version where we're running a red 6, I could see Joust being a better option.
Yeah, just the security effect being so different though too.
Yeah.
It's adding it to hand versus the aura of +1 check.
Oh, you just die.
Mm-hmm.
Reinforce is an interesting option that was in for BT9, but I just put it for Solars because I needed space. Reinforce is kind of a card that I just want if the meta is slow. Banking the 3 memory is kind of the best part of the card, in my opinion, for this deck specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And just healing 1 for 6 isn't really cutting it versus something like a cross-4 loop.
Yeah, and I mentioned Kari's on a very similar note.
Yeah. I'd rather have TK in this list, since effectively it is an aggro deck, and I would like to see
cards
5 more cards when I'm playing aggro.
Yeah, and one thing,
more options.
I didn't pull up a card here just because it kind of came to mind. Like, you talked about banking the memory. Have you ever looked at Blaze Memory Boost? I don't know if you know what it is, but
oh, it's the security one, right?
Yeah, it gives an extra security check for 3 memory, so in a sense it's a worse Inferno, but it does bank 2 memory.
I could maybe see it if I don't need the space where Solarmon is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the key spot here, because I think everything else is pretty much core. And then, so if eventually we see Cross getting faded out, Solarmon can go, and that might be able to go in. I don't know, it's an interesting card for sure.
Yeah, it is just something I last second thought of here. We're having a conversation, because you talked about the banking memory, and it just came to mind. But it is pretty cost heavy too.
Yeah.
But yeah, just wrapping up this deck profile though, Yellow-Red Hybrid is built as a hyper-aggro deck that uses Tamers as a safe way to keep value on board, especially in this poke format. Tamers and options that provide bombing effects and setting up more advantage are really great for closing out game. If Cross is swinging at you, poking damage, and you get some Tamers, you might as well get some free damage in return. It's kind of like if they check security rookies, you can check them right back and potentially be more potent about it. Not to mention, if they check Atomic Inferno, they could potentially be dead their next turn as well. And then something that we are going into is mulligans are being used in online premier events, and it supports this deck even further for what you really want to accomplish. We mentioned before that you would slightly change up this list with the use of mullies. What way were you kind of leaning towards with that? I know we mentioned it briefly.
I think if I didn't have moles, I think I would replace Jet for a Gil X and a Solarmon for a Boko. I think it's not a lot of changes, but it definitely affects your consistency quite heavily, since you get that draw from GD1.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense too, just hitting those early game explosive starts more frequently. Well, thank you so much for helping with this deck profile and talking about your creation here. It's really cool. I loved seeing it on stream the other night. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to mention about the list?
No, other than I hope that it does well in BT10.
Yeah,
and that Hydra doesn't destroy it, because Cherrymon is a pretty good card.
Yeah, I hope this was inspiring for anyone else. If you guys enjoy this content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. With that being said, take care, y'all, and have a nice day.